Welcome to week 2 of the third global conference of the One Planet Network's Sustainable Food Systems conference. I'm Jamie Morrison. I'm Director of the Food Systems and Food Safety Division at FAO, which is a member of the Advisory Committee of the Sustainable Food Systems Programme, and which has been part of the conference's organising committee since the preparations start. Before we continue with this week's discussion, let's take a look at some of the highlights of last week's sessions. In particular, for those of you who may not have been able to see all of the sessions that we've had so far. On Wednesday, the 25th of November, we kicked off the conference with a keynote speech by Agnes Kalibata, the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for the 2021 UN Food Systems Summit, as well as opening statements by the Agriculture Ministers of Costa Rica and Thailand, the Director General of the Swiss Federal Office for Agriculture, and the global leader of WWF's food practice. Dr. Kalibata reminded us that food systems have a lot to offer in terms of achieving the SDGs, provided that we are able to identify and implement the right solutions. In this context, she highlighted that the Food Systems Summit will be a solutions summit. Dr. Kalibata called on us as the SFS program and all of the participants to this conference to help in bringing the landscape together by making the voices of all food system stakeholders heard, including divergent views, and giving them voice. She challenged us throughout the sessions of these 2 weeks to think about game changers and practical ways of effectively involving our respective organizations and governments in this process, and to come up with actionable recommendations for the Food Systems Summit action tracks. So session 2 looked at the relevance of food systems across different multilateral frameworks and policy agendas, as well as at the role of multi-stakeholder mechanisms in joining up such agendas. Speakers in session 2 also highlighted the needs for a right-based approach to food systems. And so this slide just shows some of the key recommendations that came out of session 2. These included food systems must be embedded in all relevant multilateral frameworks. Different thematic agenda needs to coordinate on aspects related to food systems, and also that national and local level multi-stakeholder mechanisms are very useful vehicles for coordination across the different policy areas. The following day, session 3 was split into 2 parts. One that examined 3 sets of existing indices that can be used to measure food systems sustainability, and a second part that looked at 3 case studies that were developed by the Sustainable Food Systems Programme, with a focus on the role of science in informing policy. The key findings of this session included food systems are dynamic, and it is therefore important to keep a productive dialogue between scientists, practitioners, policymakers, in order to ensure that constant progress can be made towards more sustainable food systems. A second finding was that standardized indicators to measure the sustainability in food systems must meet both scientific rigor but also intuitive simplicity in order to be used in practice. And thirdly, that science has an important role to play in identifying trade-offs in order to inform policy decisions. Session 4, which took place last Friday, was moderated by the chair of the Committee on World Food Security, with representatives from international organizations and national as well as local governments discussing how to promote policy coherence in relation to food systems and ways to effectively manage policy trade-offs. Again, this slide shows some of the key recommendations that came out of that session, and which included food system transformation requires policies that promote sustainability along the entire value chain. Such policies need to be designed with a holistic approach, linking areas such as agriculture, nutrition, environment, health, and trade. but also that trade-offs can best be addressed by linking multi-stakeholder bodies to the policy-making process, including to manage differences in food system actors' interests, as well as their underlying value. And then in session 5, which was organized by the Global Alliance for the Future of Food, different types of investors and funders discussed their respective roles in bringing about the transformation of food systems. Their key findings were, firstly, that investors and funders should unlock opportunities in sustainable food systems and better align those opportunities for greater impact. Governments should create an enabling environment for ambitious integrated capital investment targets in their respective contexts, and also that private resources should support viable business models for food systems using sustainable practices. And this can be done using concepts such as true cost accounting to identify investments that increase positive outcomes in food and agriculture. So what do we have on the agenda for the coming week? In today's session, we will focus on addressing food system transformation through consumers, promoting awareness and behavioral change, and leveraging public procurement to accelerate SDG implementation. On Tuesday the 1st, we have the Global Food Systems Summit Dialogue, and this is an invitation-only event. It will be co-convened by Agnes Calabata, the Costa Rican Ministry for Livestock and Agriculture, the Deputy General of the Swiss Federal Office for Agriculture, and the WWF Global Leader of the Food Practice. The dialogue will be curated by David Nabarro, and discussion topics will be very closely aligned with the themes of the sessions of this third Global Sustainable Food Systems Programme conference. And then we have the final conference session, which takes place on December the 3rd. During this session, the conference session chairs will report back on their key findings from the respective sessions. And then we will have the group of Summit Action Track chairs and the chair of the scientific group, Joachim von Braun, who will discuss and present their vision and plans towards the summit and beyond, and then discuss the relevance of the findings of this conference for their respective action tracks. And I think in the context of this conference, it's very important to mention that in addition to the focus on Food Systems Summit throughout the conference, a number of sessions, and 5, 6, and 7 in particular, have been co-organized with other One Planet Network partners and programs. These include the Global Alliance for the Future of Food, but also the Sustainable Public Procurement Program and the Consumer Information Program. And I think this is reflective of the many other events and processes that are joining in the efforts towards the Food Systems Summit, which will take place towards the end of next year. A good example of this is the event which was organized by several partners of the Sustainable Food Systems Programme, including the World Economic Forum, IFAD, Wageningen University, and many others that took place just prior to this conference on the 23rd and 24th of November. This was called Bold Actions for Food as a Force for Good. And I would now like to invite Sean DeClean of the World Economic Forum to provide a brief summary of that event, particularly with regards to discussions that aim to provide thinking on the shaping of game-changing solutions. So Sean, you have the floor.
Thanks, Jamie. And no, it's really nice to be actually aligning. We made sure that we aligned these two events quite carefully so that they flowed on from each other, because I think there was a lot of synergy, both, as you said, in the partners that were involved and just in the events themselves. And so what took place in the Bold Actions for Food as a Force for Good was a fairly high energy 2 days in this virtual space, bringing together a diverse group of participants from around the world, and to really look at how we created momentum towards the Food Systems Summit, but also how that we look at transforming food systems for the better to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. And actually, as one participant in one of the key sessions pointed out, I mean, that we're talking about that we only have 9 harvests left. So we really need to take that action now to build the change that we want to see happen. I think, what the event showed is that everyone must eat, and that food is very connected across this complex web of social, economic, and environmental issues. And so, in a way, food systems are a marvelous demonstration of what sustainable development can really look like. And just by the fact that people interact every day and the actions that we take individually. And so these 13 organisations coming together for this event really demonstrated that dynamism. There were, the way the event was structured, it was focused, very condensed into 2 days. So unlike yourselves where you wisely spread this over a couple of weeks. So there were 3 main live stream sessions and then 11 core sessions, mostly focusing around the action tracks and change levers. And then there were about 35 affiliated events. And then there were a number of student innovation challenges, because we had a number of universities also linked into the event. And I think what came out over the couple of days was that everyone should be encouraged that both we need to scale up, we need to develop these game changer initiatives, and there's a number of those that are starting to be shaped, and so really looking at what they could look like, but also at an individual level, and that anything that if anyone had an idea, to bring that idea to life and to work with those around you to scale it up. And I think that was what was quite exciting when we looked at like the student challenges, where we had ideas, everything from food loss and waste to looking at developing, markets for plant-based proteins, or the smart use of e-money to improve farmer access to markets. But I think what it reminded us was that this point of, okay, so how do we take action? I think we were also seeing that, the videos associated with the event had more than 2 million views. I think we had more than 125,000 people live streaming the plenaries. And so what it shows is there's also a lot of interest in this, and a lot of mainstream interest. I think what came out of it, which echoes a lot of what you're saying, is that apart from these significant opportunities in building up some of these transformational, game-changing initiatives, there will be trade-offs. And so then what is it that's going to necessitate taking the long-term commitment to action that goes against some of the short-termism of political or business reporting cycles, and how do we realign incentive structures to really make sure that nutritious food grown equitably and sustainably makes sense, both for farmers, but for businesses and consumers. Jamie mentioned the need to take this holistic, whole systems approach. I think that came out very strongly. And so a lot of discussion around how the 5 action tracks actually work together, and how they cross-link. And so, what are some of those enablers that will really allow some of those initiatives to go to scale? I think there was quite a bit of discussion around the need for frameworks. The CFS chair spoke about like the tools that are being developed. I think, coming out of this network in particular, that is being hosted over these couple of weeks through yourselves, there's an opportunity to really start to look at, right, how do we take forward those frameworks? What does that mean, not just in a global sense, but at a regional level? And there were a number of regional events at this that really showed the need for country-specific or regional-specific action. And that also we need to develop up a common language. And so that's something that I think, that if we're going to change the public discourse and ultimately pay the price, to capture the benefit in the system, we need to be using a language in common that people can relate to, so that those impacts can be measured properly. If we're going to adopt a solution-orientated mindset, then it is going to require quite a rethink in terms of the way we work on partnerships, multi-stakeholder initiatives, platforms, how they can be assessed, how they can be taken to scale. So I think from the event organizers' side, the fact that this event helped to, as part of a broader drumbeat towards the summit, to really take this out and create that agenda, and then is being followed on by this event today. This event last week that you're hosting, and then through this week is really positive, because I think what we're seeing is that the action really needs to be taken now. And so I'll leave you with those couple of thoughts. How do we create the frameworks and the language to take this holistic approach to support the action tracks? How do we develop an action solution orientated mindset, and how do we make sure that we create a public discourse in a way that brings and crowds everyone in?
Thank you, Sean, for these insights into what by all accounts was a very successful gathering, and we're already seeing some of the results feeding into the Food System Summit process. So the third global conference of the Sustainable Food Systems Programme and the Bold Actions for Food as a Force for Good event are two examples of a series of different types of collaborative and multi-stakeholder efforts that, while not part of the formal Food Systems Summit structure, are in full alignment with it, both in terms of spirit and the objectives of the summit, and can therefore make very important contributions, especially in this still relatively early stage of the preparatory process. So in bringing this recap session to a close, I would like to invite you all to stay tuned for session 6 on addressing food systems through consumers, promoting awareness and behavioural change, and to wish you all a very productive second conference week. Thank you.